Hey, Bigpod.
Hey,
You remember when Steve used to be on the show?
yeah, I do. Vaguely, but I do.
Yeah, did you know that he just did another episode of Tech Over Tea with Brody Robertson?
I know.
Yeah. It was quite the interesting conversation this time around. But hey, glad to see that, he's still doing pretty well considering the part of the world that he lives in.
Yeah.
All right, start the music. Hey guys, welcome to No Talks Aloud. I am your host, Josh. And Big Pod, you're looking a little tired today, and I
Yeah.
apologize about that.
Yeah, it's middle of the night, Europe time.
Yeah, and it's turning night America time, and there's a 6 hour time difference, so you can only imagine how late Big Pod's been staying up today. Thank you for being a champion. Uh, I blame my sleep schedule being completely screwed up. If you want to hear a bit about that, subscribe to the Patreon and catch a pre-show. So, anyways, I got to, just browsing like the RSS feeds yesterday, and I get this post from the Register saying that Mozilla is rolling this thing called Thundermail, a Gmail Office 365 rival. Kind of a bad title now that I look at it again here. So let me just first of all explain this here for like the normal person, right? Because we all understand that we probably shouldn't be hosting our own email services. But that doesn't mean that I don't. That doesn't discourage me from trying.
Yeah.
It doesn't discourage me from trying because it's like, I think I can do this. I want to do this. So, anyways, let's talk about email, but like not from the consumer perspective. As my cat is destroying things in my bathroom now. Cool. So, anyways, from like the perspective of the business owner, because this is where email actually really matters for some unknown reason. You have to have like a working email service. And realistically, when you're doing that, there's like only really 3 or 4 companies that you're going to be talking with for, email. That's going to be Google for the G Suite or Google Suite or Gmail Workspaces, whatever the heck they're calling it
Google
nowadays.
Workspaces.
It's Google Workspaces currently. They'll just change the name again next year.
Yeah.
Then we got Office 365, which has been on brand for what, 6 years now?
I have to correct you. Isn't it called Microsoft 365 now?
Oh, it could be. It could be.
Yes, it is. It's Microsoft 365. And it includes things like Microsoft Office, aka Word, Excel, PowerPoint. It
Yeah,
also
it's
includes
also probably
OneDrive, Outlook.
it's also the most expensive one.
Actually, I'm not sure.
I mean,
Like,
if you're trying to get just working email,
I think it is just as expensive as everything else. Yes, but yeah, if it's just for email,
if it's just for email, you have to get all of Office 365.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's the most expensive one. But you also get a lot for that subscription too, which generally, I think 365 is an okay product. I just fucking hate Teams with a passion.
Yeah. Teams is horrible.
Yeah, I'm glad that it's no longer coming with Teams, or it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And then you also have like the more manual options of AWS's Workmail, which is what we use for our show. Because it's like the closest we can get to like self-hosting email without like the struggles of actually self-hosting email. And then you have like the other options, like your fast mail services, your Zoho Mail, and all of those third-party services that exist to not be like the other guys.
Yeah.
Not that they're bad products, but they're just not as popular. But anyways, Mozilla. Well, specifically Mozilla Thunderbird, because there's a bit of Thunderbird is a bit of a weird stepchild in like the Mozilla branding, where Thunderbird is kind of like its own sub company of Mozilla, and they're more or less financially independent from Mozilla, sort of. It's a bit weird. I remember like getting this explained to me one time before, and it made perfect sense, and I can't remember it nowadays. But Thunderbird has been this venerable email client that has existed for a very long time now. Like it's basically almost as old as like Microsoft Outlook in the space of email clients, and it's also like the only one that is still more or less like a native package that you can install on most any operating system. It's also like the only really big one that's like open source or and supposedly free and open source, but not quite like Free Software Foundation endorsed and all that. But it's the only one that's like that. And they've been shedding numbers, and they're trying to get like their user. They want to see like their user base go back to growing. Uh, in like this Register article, they link off to the Thunderbird stats page, which just tracks like the initial installations of Thunderbird. That's all it's tracking. It's just like, did you install Thunderbird? Because you got to remember when you do a Thunderbird on a fresh installation, it's going to pop up and say, "Hey, welcome to Thunderbird." Well, that sends telemetry back that's saying, "Hey, there's a fresh installation," and it just tracks like daily installations, which they're trending around something like 16 million installations. First of all, that's a lot of installations still, but it's also a free product at the end of the day, and only a fraction of that actually donates money back to Thunderbird. But so they're trying to see if they can get a little bit more revenue into it with this change, and they're still wanting to push forward to having like that encompassing product that the competitors are offering nowadays. Because the big advantage that Microsoft 365 has in the business space is you pay a single subscription and you get everything.
Yeah.
Same thing with Google Workspaces, and we can set that up on like our free through like the free and open options, but then you have to deal with like technical debt, where that some companies just are wanting to put on somebody else.
Yeah.
So they're wanting to attempt to that. So they've posted like a short game plan. They don't quite have like the built-in Office suite or anything like that yet, but that's to say that they might be integrating it into that later using stuff like Calibre or even just LibreOffice.
Yeah.
Because those projects already exist. There's no point in making a new one.
And
But,
LibreOffice does have a web version.
It does. It's pretty solid.
Yeah.
So they've announced Thunderbird Appointment, which is a scheduling tool. Makes sense. Thunderbird Send, which is a rebuilt, modernized version of the old Firefox Send service from 2019. Which, hey, that's pretty cool. Thunderbird Assist, which is an optional AI service.
Yay.
Yeah, because companies want AI, so there's AI. And then there's Thundermail, which is an email hosting service based on the Stallware stack that, of course, uses the Thunderbird client, and supports the things that you're supposed to support through the email. So, give Thunderbird money; they will now host your email for you. That's basically what they're saying. Which, hey, that's pretty cool. Now, of course, Bigpod and I shared a couple of opinions about this just yesterday.
Yeah, but before we do that, I have an interesting finding I found while you were talking about it. Microsoft is actually cheaper for email than Google.
Really?
Yeah, it's 6 versus 7 per month per user.
But there's a difference.
What?
There's a difference. Because on Google, you're just paying for the users. On Office 365, you still have that $50 tax from Microsoft.
No.
No?
What $50
They got rid of
tax?
that? It's
But
just pay per user now.
yeah, I'm looking at their best plans for business. Microsoft 365 Business Basic, which contains custom business email and 1 terabyte of cloud storage per employee. It's $6 per user per month, paid yearly, which is also the same in the which is on Google Workspace. It's $7 per user per month on a yearly basis as well. Just 30 gigabytes of pooled storage per user, and also same secure business email with custom domain. And if you
Okay.
double that, you can also get desktop versions of basic Office suite. But if we return back to our actual topic, we have things like the Thunderbird new suite. Like, I don't have a problem with them doing it. I have a problem if they don't have a web client for everything. And I'm not joking. I need to have a web client for everything. I won't be fine if you just have it built in a desktop app. Because guess what? I don't want to use a desktop app for email.
You actually want to use a web browser?
Yes.
My goodness, you savage.
Not really.
Oh,
Most emails these days are actually HTML documents. Guess what is the best at displaying HTML documents?
the thing that was originally designed to render HTML documents, so probably like a browser style program.
Yes.
In your case, it's probably going to be Edge.
Yes.
Yeah,
And even in general, like I just find I like the separation of concerns. So I have multiple emails that are like personal, whether it be work, whether it be the other work, aka my podcast, and I like to see them separate. I don't have to like go and open one app and then I have all of them thrown in front of me, and now I want to send an email. Am I sending from the right address? I don't have those problems. It's something I got used to, and there is no way I'm switching off of separate email clients for basically every email, except my main email, which has so many subdomains or different aliases on it. I need to clean that up, and that even has like so much filtering on it. It's horrible.
Oh boy.
And it's kind of filters that the host doesn't even support. I have my own program that does the filtering.
Yeah, speaking of filtering, like the one thing that I found that I genuinely appreciate about the Microsoft solution is the way that you can set up like inbox rules in 365 is a little bit more intuitive than even Thunderbird.
Yeah.
So so if like this actually does become like a product that that's actually seeing use, I wonder what changes we're going to see come out as a result out of Thunderbird, because that's the let's be honest here, the business customer is probably not really like the number one user of Thunderbirds even still today. I might be wrong on that, but I still see like the more normal desktop user, or like the super small business user. We're not seeing like that medium to large business customer making use of this, which they're really the target market for like these software stacks. Let's be honest. So well, honestly, I'm probably going, if when they come out with this, I'm probably going to switch to it, because I've been using Zoho for a while now, and moving email providers is really not super painful. So I'll just hop over and just give it a try.
I may look at the backend they're using. The stalwart thing.
That way we can get Tux Mail going. Actually, is that a domain right now? I might want to register that one before I think about it. Nope, but it is a project. A mail stack for Ubuntu and Debian. It's one of those bash scripts. You run the bash script, and it sets up an email server for you. It hasn't been updated in 12 years. I bet you it still doesn't work. Okay. So, I think we've exhausted that topic. Let's talk about Microsoft now, because we love Microsoft.
Sure.
Bigpod. We're like the biggest fans of Microsoft. They can do almost nothing wrong, but yet still happen to do everything wrong.
Yeah.
But we do have to talk here because it's been 50-ish years since Microsoft became a company. So they hit the news this week because, I don't want to talk about the other thing that hit the news this week because this is not a video game podcast and everybody's talking about the Switch. But I don't want to talk about the Switch, so I'm going to talk about Microsoft. I think the 50th anniversary is today while we record this, but this article was posted a few days ago. But Bill Gates has released the source code for I think it just says original source code. It doesn't say if this is an operating system or a program, but it's written in BASIC for a PDP-10 mainframe at Harvard. He published a 157-page PDF of, just the scanned raw code, because this is punch cards. This is not like a Git repository or anything. It's actual punch cards for this stuff. And it's super cool just to see this. I didn't know that you could... I didn't know how... I'm not like an old school programmer, so I've never really looked at basic code before.
Wait, I think this is an interpreter for... Huh. No, I don't know what this is.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
I'm certain that if you take the time and type all this out, you could probably compile it into something and, just run a /run and just see what it does the good old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
But this was really just like a thing here, and then Bill's coming out and saying that it still remains like the coolest code that he's written to this day, and he still gets a kick out of looking at it because the one thing that I found when working with software is that it doesn't matter if it's good software or not, but you probably still have like that collection of old projects that you got when you just started learning. And you like one thing that I have is like a Raspberry Pi based weather system. That was my introduction to like the Raspberry Pi and how you could interact with the hardware on a Raspberry Pi using Python. And I still remember like figuring out how to write that stupid script that turns an LED on and off. I still have that, and it's like I don't remember how I came up with like all the lines to write this, but it's cool that I remember writing it. I don't remember how I did it because this was like 10-ish years ago, but it's cool that's still there. Oh yeah, you're right. This is an interpreter. It's a basic interpreter because the computer doesn't naturally speak BASIC. So it's software emulation, fresh out of 1975.
Yeah.
I bet you that was super fast.
Definitely.
Yeah, but of course, they've got like the bulk of like the document actually on like a YouTube video. Compared to the written article that I have posted here, but they do link to the video. It's PC Magazine. There's only so much that you can really expect out of it. So it's worth the talk here, but in like the history of computing, Microsoft is one of those companies where it's just like you do have to kind of pay attention to, at least from a historical perspective. I know that they're not really like a champion, a company that we should all be proud of today, but like back in like the older days when they were just getting started, just seeing like that whole market of computers, where you had something like 17 different architectures, uh, infinite flavors of Unix and Unix-like systems. You had Microsoft come out with the introducing DOS, and then you had IBM pushing like PowerPC based software and so on, which they still push to some extent today.
Well, it is their architecture.
Yeah, they made it, so of course. So it was worth like a little bit of reading, and I tend to like take a more historical approach to like computers these days than actually learning how to use them. So next up, we've got cameras. Bigpod, are you a big user of the cameras? Taking pictures, snapping
really.
clips and all that? Okay.
Not really. I'm
Well,
not really big photograph guy.
yeah.
I don't take selfies. I don't take landscape photos. None of that.
Well, back when I decided I was going to be a YouTuber, I ran off and I bought myself this fancy Canon camera. It's an M200 camera. And I picked it up when they were doing like all the YouTube videos, going like, "This is the camera to buy" and all that. And I picked it up because it's a Canon camera, and my grandma has a collection of Canon lenses, so all I had to do was just buy this camera, buy an adapter, and now I have like 170 lenses I could pick from. But I still only use the stock lens that came with the camera because it just works. But I saw this come up and I'm like, it's been a while since I've actually used this camera to take a picture because it's been really cold outside and I just didn't feel like taking pictures of a frozen lake this year, unlike last year. But this went down a bit of an interesting discussion, and watching companies justify why they're using proprietary RAW codecs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we're talking about pictures on computers, generally most people are interacting with .png and .jpeg files.
Yeah.
But when you're taking pictures, you don't want to take your pictures in those files. Instead, you're typically wanting to, if you can, you want to take your picture as a raw file.
Yep. And what that kind of file has is basically all the information the sensor can collect, while the picture you would see online only essentially has just pixel information. What is that pixel? The actual raw file has little sensor information in it.
Yeah. Let's compare this with audio, right? Let's compare this with audio. You understand that like MP3 is like a compressed audio codec.
Yeah.
Whereas .wav or FLAC, they're the uncompressed codecs. It's basically the same thing with cameras.
Not really.
Not really, but from like the topmost level explanation, yes.
For example, things that happen to be in that are not necessary in like a final delivery format is stuff like light information and stuff like that have no need to do in a deliverable file, but to an editor could actually help a crap ton, because with the information about lights, you can actually then do stuff to the actual sensor information to get just as quality image out of the editor, despite editing the light settings for the sensor, because you are simulating a sensor essentially.
I know one of the things that I found is that I can change the ISO value of a picture that I take.
Yeah.
Without having to retake the picture.
Yeah.
Hey, that's pretty cool.
Because at the end of the day, there's just a program thing that happens on the sensor. It could happen before or after you taking the photo.
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, anyways, there is a free and open source RAW codec called DNG. This was created by Thomas Knoll, one of the guys that initially created Photoshop. Uh, and that is the open codec standard that nobody uses, even though it's a lot older and more integrated than all these other ones.
Yeah, kind of makes sense, not doesn't make sense at the same time.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you are trying to cram all the sensor information, and depending on how you're thinking of things, you may just go and use the format your sensor already uses.
Yeah. Now, anyways, The Verge learned that this is a thing, and they sent a couple of reporters to these camera companies to basically ask them. It's like, hey, Sony, why is it that you're using the ARW format instead of the DNG format for your raw image files? And then Sony had to explain why they're using proprietary software.
So let's hear why.
Yeah. So, Michael Bubalo and Ryoko Noguchi of Sony's product teams tell The Verge that Sony Alpha cameras use a proprietary ARW format to maximize performance based on device characteristics as the image sensor and image processing engine. So, I think what they're trying to say is that the ARW format holds very, very close to the heart information about, like, how the sensor works on the camera.
It's essentially specifically made for their sensor.
Yeah, it's specifically made and tailored, which, hey, that's pretty cool. But that doesn't answer why they just don't support the DNG format. So then they went to Panasonic, who said a proprietary format enables better optimization and supports unique camera functions, according to Masanori Koyama of Panasonic's Lumix division. Yeah. And they ask a few of these. And, of course, Nikon and Fujifilm did not respond, but they got responses from Pentax, Canon, and Sigma. Some of them, gave a little bit more in depth than others. But they've also got, like, this handy list of, like, all the camera manufacturers and what RAW formats that they support. So, Canon, you've got the Canon RAW format, so CR2, CR3, and CRW. Nikon has their own, which is NEF and RW. Sony supports ARW, Fujifilm RAF, Panasonic RW2. But if you want a camera that supports the DNG format, that free and open standard, that is Pentax, but only on select cameras. Ryko, Leica,
as far as I know.
Leica, yeah. Which is on most of the cameras, but some support the RWL format. Then you got, I think Sigma's newer cameras are DNG only. DJI, the drone company, and Samsung.
And Apple.
Apple has a toggle. You can use Apple ProRAW and DNG. The difference is that the DNG doesn't get all that AI processing that the Apple ProRAW gets, so...
Yes,
that's why people typically use a ProRAW.
Yeah. Also, let's be clear. So one of the reasons they also the companies or representatives of those companies listed is also that they can add proprietary information. Basically, exactly what in the most corporate speak Sony representatives also said. That they can encode more stuff that are more targeted at their sensors than DNG can support being a common standard. And I think that's a big problem with common standards like those. That how much of the proprietary stuff you can put in if you do not just go, here is an empty part, you can put whatever you want in it, which is really ugly for a standard to do anyway.
Yeah, that said, they got a quote from Ben Sadovsky, who's a developer at Lux Optics, a company that makes this image processing software. And he comes back saying that I have yet to hear a good reason for using proprietary RAW formats. The underlying data is actually the same. If a manufacturer comes up with additional data that isn't included in the DNG standard, the format is extensible enough that a camera manufacturer can just toss it in there. Because that's another thing that you can have with these open protocol standards, is that they can be extended. So you can
Yes.
have DNG where anything that can edit a DNG can open up like a file, but that file could have extended information. So let's just say Canon, because I have a Canon camera. So we can have DNG Canon as an extension for like that more specific Canon stuff, and then just
Yes.
be a plugin.
But there
But
is a giant problem with that. A lot of people do not know or understand. Standards change.
yes, that's the problem.
And a lot of these standards, also certain fields, have certain amount of max characters. And as soon as you have some free flow part, you're gonna be relying on either have that part have to be at very end, which can be all sorts of messy for the software that reads it. And also beside that, there is basically on the free flow part, you need a huge ton of leeway for the checking software and for the software that opens the format. So you need to have, so if you have such a standard, you either need to limit what you can put in, or make your software jankier, honestly.
Yeah, that said, it would be nice if they were willing to provide at least plugins for like these image editors that we have. Like a popular one is Darktable, as I think Darktable is not the Adobe option. I don't think I don't know who does Darktable, to be honest with you. But I know that for like my camera, I have to use Raw Therapy to be able to pull up that CR3 file.
Yeah.
And it's like a specific fork of Raw Therapy. It's not Raw Therapy itself. It's like an alternate fork just for the CR3. So I'm typically not really taking pictures in CR3. Sorry. I know that there's probably a photo editor out there that's screaming at me somewhere, but I also just don't really do a whole lot of
I
editing either.
sometimes, if I really do take photos, which is rarely, but then sometimes, so even rare on top of that, I may take a photo with Samsung RAW, so which is then a DNG apparently, but with Samsung's on the phone raw photo mode.
Yeah. Which I've taken pictures with that too. Like you can take some surprisingly good pictures with a phone.
Yeah.
Like actually.
Yeah.
That said, you also have to realize that you're using a phone, so there's post processing done to that picture most of the time.
Not necessarily, depending on what mode you're using.
That's true.
I think the raw
does depend on the
one
mode.
doesn't use that much of the post processing, but not sure. It isn't like full raw as far as I'm aware, but it's like closest thing to the raw it is logical on a phone to do.
So, anyways, to end the topic there, because I'm certain that somebody's going to ask what I use my camera for that I spent $600 for back when it was a $600 camera. For the most part, it sits right above my screens as like a dedicated, webcam. And I take it out for like family events and take pictures there because it's a camera. Might as well just use that. Although a lot of times anymore lately, haven't really had much reason to go out to those, since a lot of the families actually kind of just moved away and farther away from me. I don't know if like they're trying to run away from me or what, but a lot of them have. So, anyways, Bigpod,
What?
I forgot how much I miss Fedora. Like sometimes it just works. It just works. You don't have to worry about compiling anything. Sometimes you do have to work. Sometimes you do have to get into a fight with package maintainer opinions, which I don't necessarily blame Fedora for, because they got good reasons as to why they do some of the things that they do. But anyways, if you would like to continue our adventures and tell me about your love about blue versus red hats, you can send us an email. Just send us an email to contact@tuckspace.com. It is a working email. Every now and then I have to remind myself that this email actually works. You send an email to that, it actually bounces to both Bigpod and I, because it's secretly one of those things called an alias Bigpod. Did you know that? They have these these fake email addresses.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it bounces back, and it then forwards it to both of us. That way, either one of us could respond. So every now and then we'll get an email from like this Jeff guy that Bigpod might respond to, that I don't know if Bigpod actually responded to. But hey, it's a thing that happens. So, and of course, if you're watching us on the YouTube, hit that like button and the comment button, and maybe share the video around a little bit too. Try to see if we can grow a little bit in the algorithm. It's been like a very steady upwards trend.
Yeah.
But we're slightly incorporated now, so it would be nice if line goes up a little bit quicker, just a little bit. Because I got an email today. That hosting bill is finally starting to creep up. Starting to. Yeah, starting to, because I had to expand. I had to expand a disk on like my web server today, and is on the same bill. So, it's just that steady reminder, because we're doing this podcasting the hard way. We're paying for one of those things called a VPS server that hosts like this thing that you download podcasts from. It's called Castopod. It's a cool project, really cool project. If you're wanting to make your own podcast, and you want to host it yourself, and not have to like do the whole fancy website thing or look at WordPress, Castopod so far has proven to be a very good option for us.
Yeah.
So, and to support our efforts with this too, because we've got that wall coming. It's going to come where we're going to get hit with that network transfer bill. We've been averaging pretty good on it, because most of what the server's servicing is HTML files and occasionally an MP3. But we're trending a little on the low side. But as the show grows, that bill that bill is going to be coming and looming over us. And it turns out that network transfers are not nearly as cheap as storage. So that's a thing that's coming. So help us hedge against the bets in the future. Go to patreon.com/notuxallowed. Give us a couple dollars. And of course, we'll give you access to this thing called a pre-show, where as soon as I sit down at the computer, I'll just open up OBS, hit record, and just start talking. And sometimes we talk about some really, really cool things, maybe some controversial things that, we typically try to avoid talking about here in the main show, but sometimes it leaks through anyway.
Yeah.
Like, my work schedule or political opinions from two different sides of the world. Because, it's unavoidable at this point. And of course, we've also got these wonderful links here. If you would like to contact us individually, this is our preferred social media service, the Fediverse. You can put this into your threads or your Mastodon instances. You can pull us up to. In fact, our Castopod integrates nicely with the Fediverse and gives you you can set it up so that way Castopod notifies you when episodes are released. Which when I discovered that's pretty cool. And I think that's basically everything, right? I mean, I guess we could talk about Jeff's last email.
And what was his last email?
Well, he was talking about like figuring out like parallel processing, but about our debate here with Ubuntu switching to the Rust utilities. I don't know if you actually read this one yet, but anyways, Jeff is a guy that comments on the show fairly often, and it's nice to seeing that that engagement. But people talk to Jeff too. I'll chat with him. He shows up in our YouTube comments. Sometimes he sends us an email. Sometimes, but this is what he says here. Great dialogue. I always walk away knowing something new. Hey, that's pretty cool. That's what I try to do on this podcast, but sometimes I even hit like my own limitations of what I know. But anyways, he continues. Now this whole thing about sequential processing sounds like a true multitasking never takes place, and yet we have capable hardware to facilitate true multitasking. That's the CPU cores.
I think here he might have made a mistake.
Yeah, he might have.
Because multitasking happens all the time as separate cores do separate programs. What he probably meant is true multi-threading, as in within a single program, tasks are split into separate threads, so they don't happen sequentially, but in parallel.
Yeah. Anyways, he continues here. Naturally, most folks would ask why parallel processing or multi-threading of files isn't happening when we've had the hardware capable of doing that. And he agrees that yes, at the end of the day, what matters is that the information gets accurately processed in a safe manner. He's not really going to discern the speed difference between Rust and C because sometimes there is a difference, but sometimes that difference is so small that it doesn't matter. Both of them compile to raw machine code anyway. But of course, he does understand that there's like the whole safety arguments behind Rust, which some are more valid than others. But I'd like to see some more emails. I like listening to like these feedback segments of all these other podcasts. We just don't receive enough feedback to do that ourselves. But hey, yeah. Jeff, thanks for sending us the email. I think he also commented that on the YouTube channel too.
Yeah.
So hey,
to respond properly, I'm gonna say that the reason we don't see them, we see the multi-threaded processing of files or anything really that isn't like very necessary to be speedy, is simply because it's a pain in the ass to write. Like, you need things like semaphores and other techniques like mutexes to get it through. Because if you think of two threads as pipes, at the end you need some logic or something to get all the flow of, let's go with marbles to go into that one pipe. Otherwise, what you're gonna get is a traffic jam. Or worse, overriding of data. Two of those marbles going to the same place and exploding the pipe. That's what would happen if you don't do like semaphores, mutexes, and so on, and it just gets really hard to write.
Yeah. In fact, I think I looked up like multi-threading in C. I still don't understand it, but I understood the thing here is just like, hey, call this library to do this task. I'm like, oh, hey, that works.
Yeah, I know how to do multi-threading in C#. In Go, I would never attempt it in C.
But hey, you know what? I'm waiting for the day where this Code Academy course that I'm going through is going to tell me about this. But anyways, Bigpod and I can probably nerd about this here for a very long time. So I think what we'll do is we'll just go and pack up for this week here. That way, you can go on listening to the next great podcast on your queue, because some people are like me and they download more than 24 hours worth of podcast content each and every single day and and just serve eternally behind. I know it's a problem. I have to pick and choose my podcast. But anyways, guys, I'll see you next week.
Goodbye.